Hello guys! After a huge break, Lone Vic is back to explaining games and doing solo plays and reviews. I've got a new table, I've got a new room, I've got a new space and some new gear that will enable me to show you all the games that I'm interested in, that I'm playing, and that I would like you to get interested in as well. And today, for the first video after my comeback, after half a year of not being on my channel, here is My Father's Work, a game by T.C. Petty III from Renegade Game Studios. This is a fresh arrival from Kickstarter. I couldn't wait for this one. This seems to be such a great game. And today I will explain to you how to play this game. It's a game for 2 to 4 players, and it's accompanied with an application that narrates you the story of your family as it arrives at this humble village where you will continue your father's work, your father's experiments, like something from Frankenstein novels. I will tell you how to set up this game, how to play it for any number of players, basically. I won't show you the app because as I'm recording this video, it's still in final phases of testing. It should be released in a week or 2. So right now, the only thing that you can play is one of the scenarios that comes with the box, and it's on a demo version on the web page. The app, fully narrated, fully voiced, should come very, very soon. Hopefully when you're watching this video, it's already out and you'll be able to enjoy this game fully with the app. This how to play is free of any spoilers. I will only explain the basic rules. If you enjoyed the video, if you found this video helpful, if you want to support my channel, click the like button under the video, hit the subscribe, ring the notification bell to get notified about new upcoming videos. So let's take a look at how to set up My Father's Work right now. Okay, so I will be setting up one player board, but you need a minimum of 2 players, but the setup is the same for everybody. And this is the main board, which is kind of like a pieced together puzzle, as you can see, from 4 pieces and this track that is double-sided. Take note to place this track with this number 1 and number 2 numerals facing up right now. You will be flipping it later on in the game. So place this board in the middle of the table, give each player a player board of their own, and for the main setup, after constructing this board and going through the first initial narration in the application will tell you to open this village chronicle on whatever page. For example, for the scenario that we are playing, the app will tell us to open it on page 1 and place the village as so that you can see those rings here go into this indentation so that the board lays flat, and this is your main board. And the great thing about this is that as you play and as you make your decisions during the game, this board will be changing. You will be flipping the cards and the village will be evolving. There will be new places to visit. Some buildings will be replaced by others. So it's very kind of interactive, let's say. After you've set up the board, you should take the storybook tokens, which are those wooden tokens with the image of a book, and place them somewhere nearby. They are not regularly used in the game, but the application will tell you when and where to place those story tokens. They serve usually as markers, signaling that when you reach a story token on the board somewhere with one of your pieces, then you will have to read something in the app, you will have to trigger something in the app, some kind of a narration, and then this will kind of push the story forward, push the narration forward. At this point, I can also say that the application is built so that usually you can have the app, whether on the mobile phone or tablet or your, I don't know, computer or whatever screen you are using, you can have it so that everybody can see it, but sometimes the app will tell you that you should only show a fragment of text to one of the players who will be referred to in the app, and then this message, this piece of narration should be read privately by this one person so as not to spoil anything to the others, which is also a pretty cool idea. Apart from those wooden tokens, you will need this sweet resource tray, as you can see, which you can put somewhere nearby in easy access for everybody. This resource tray has, as you can see, coins in 1 and 5 denominations. You've got coffins, which you will be digging up from the graveyards for bodies for your experiment. You have some animals, which you will also be using as resources for your experiment. There are some nicely done varieties of cogs or gears or whatever, which are also resources. There are these cute glass vials. I don't know if it's glass really, but it seems like glass, or maybe some transparent kind of plastic or whatever, but they are really cool. And those 4 colors of cubes, which are knowledge cubes from 4 different categories of engineering: yellow, green biology, blue chemistry, and black the occult knowledge. So this tray goes somewhere nearby so that everybody can reach it. I will place it here on top when I will be getting my resources from. Now, the next thing is that we should place the suspicion marker and the angry mob marker. This is the suspicion marker, this is the angry mob. And the application will also tell you where on this track to place the suspicion marker. And then you will place the angry mob marker to 1 space to the left. And the trick is that whenever you have to move the angry mob marker to the right, because sometimes you will be able to, you can't pass this marker. This suspicion marker is the stopping place for the angry mob marker here. You should take from the box this tile of estate upgrades with the numbers 1 and 2 on the back and shuffle all of them together to create one stack, which will place here. And after that, you uncover 4 top estate upgrades. In my case, I have the extensive wardrobe, dungeon, kennel, and private study. In the box, you will also find generation 3 upgrades, which you don't use now, but you will need them later on, so you can put them somewhere aside. And you will also find this special vanity upgrades that have those colorful backgrounds, and you should place them next to the board available to everybody. And there are 10 of them in the base game. Each is in 2 copies. So those are all available from the word go. Now, these cards, the little ones, are called compulsion cards. You should shuffle them up and place them somewhere nearby. And these are maladjustment cards, the bigger ones. You should also shuffle them and place them somewhere nearby. There is this tray card holder for experiments A, B, and C. You should shuffle each stack separately and place it somewhere so that everybody is in easy reach. Take the round tracker, which is this blue one, and place it on the round marked early, and the generation tracker, which you place on generation 1. And this is the general setup of the board finished right now. Now, as for the player setup, most of the player setup will be done over here on this player board. So let's take a look at this one right now. Now, you have those 4 estate upgrades with the S on the reverse, and each player should take one of those. They're identical, they're called a storage shed, and place them in this first empty space for estate upgrades on your player board. You should give each player their player bases, and as you can see, there are different ones because you will have different type of workers in your pool. So you've got 2 square bases, 2 round bases, 1 hexagonal base, and 1 round base with those protrusions, with those spikes on them. So those 6 bases will be filled with minis from the miniature tray, as you can see here, And to be honest, you've got 6 types of minis, 4 of each, so there are enough for each player, but the game doesn't really specify which minis should go into which bases, so you can do it thematically. Basically, the hexagonal base will be representing you, so the scientist, the head of the family, and you can select which mini will represent you, whether you want to be female or male, or you want to look more like a, a scientist, or I don't know, a gravedigger or somebody like that, and you push your scientist into the base. This circular base with the protrusions is your spouse. So in my case, I will select this female mini as my spouse, and then the 2 round bases are for servants, and I will also take 2 of those. So I've got 1 servant and 1 more servant. Okay, and the square bases are caretakers, and you also get 2 of those. So I will place 2 caretakers in my bases here. Okay, so once you have those 6, you take yourself, so the mad scientist, and your spouse, and 1 caretaker, and you place those 3 minis in the quarters on your player board. The 3 remaining minis are placed here in the lost section of the board. So if you are playing a 4-player game, there would be 3 times 4, 12 minis here in the lost in the beginning of the game. Each player also receives 4 journal markers, which you place in the first spot of each of the journal tracks. From top to bottom, these are chemistry, biology, engineering, and the occult. Additionally, you should give 1 yay/nay token to each player. These are sometimes used for voting, so they should be placed somewhere nearby the player board. And finally, there are 3 markers. The creepy marker goes here on the 0 space of the creepy track. The insanity or sanity marker goes here on the 0 space of the insanity track, and this little fella is the victory point marker, which goes here. Additionally, each player should get a player aid card that explains the symbols, has reminders of experiments, and also the turn sequence on the other side. There are also 50 and 100 VP markers that you should give to each player because they might be useful in the game. And finally, each player selects 1 masterwork experiment that their family will be working on. And these are very thematic, very interesting. We've got the time machine, we've got the love potion, we've got lycanthropic strength, the giant spider chariot, immortality, the nyctalope, the creature, and teleportation. You can give each players the option of selecting any one they want, whichever they like, for example, thematically, or you can, for example, draw them from the deck or something like that. It doesn't really matter, it doesn't really influence the start of the game very much, so you can play with it as you want. I will take the giant spider chariot for this demonstration and put the rest of those aside. So each player gets 1 masterwork. There is a first player token in the box as well, but this will be decided by the application. So after you complete the setup and after you go through the narration, at some point the app will tell you who should the first player token go to, and this is it. And this is it for the setup, guys. So to recapitulate very quickly, we've got the main board with the page from the Village Chronicles that the app suggests to us. We've got this track on 1/2 level here. We have the tracks filled. We've got the figures in Lost, the estate expansions, the resources here, maladjustment and compulsion cards, the player boards, everything is set up for the first game. So now let's take a look how to exactly play a game of my father's work. So now, guys, I will explain to you the main rules here, because depending on which page of the village you are at, then there will be some different areas with some different effects which are described in the rule book, but the general idea is usually the same. The app will be giving you narration points, decisions to make, and so forth and so on, and you will be using the app at very specific points during the game when something is triggered, as the app explains it, or at the beginnings or ends of rounds and generations and such. So each game of My Father's Work is played over 3 generations, and each generation consists of 3 rounds, and each round consists of a sequence of turns. Each turn you will be placing one of your available minis from your quarters onto any space where they can do something. So all those village spaces and also your spaces on your player board, in your mansion, in your estate. And after each player runs out of workers to place, or after each player says pass because they don't want to create any actions, make any actions, the round ends and we can go to a new round. After 3 rounds pass, we finish 1 generation. After 3 generations pass, we end the game, and the person who collected the most victory points at the end of the game is dubbed the winner. Okay, so let's talk the basics first. So why do we need those different shaped bases for our game? Now, this is to differentiate the types of workers that we have, and there are 3 basic types: the hexagonal base of ourselves, so the scientist, the circular basis of the servants, the square basis of the caretakers, and also additionally there is this 4th one, which is the wife, but she is treated as a circular base, so she is treated as a servant, but she has those protrusions to mark that she is the wife, because sometimes the game effects will tell you that something is directly affecting the wife herself, right? Or the spouse, sorry, because you can choose it vice versa. In my case, it's the wife. So why those bases are different? Now, these circular guys, so the servants, they can go anywhere into the village, to any of those spaces in the village. They can also go to fulfill actions in the estate. But as you can see here, you've got those circular base symbols crossed over, which means that if you send one servant with a circular base here, after performing this action, at the end of the round in which he performed this action, he will be lost. So you will lose him from your quarters. If he was here, for example, and you used him in your turn to record knowledge, he would at the end of the round become lost. And here, if you want to use servants with circular bases, you need to send 2 of them. So for example, 1 normal servant and your wife, and again, at the end of your round, after they perform the experiment, they would also be lost. So the servants are best utilized walking around the village and doing stuff around the village. Now, the caretakers with the square bases, they're too ugly and they're too kind of suspicious looking kind of things to go out into the village. So they never can go into a village space unless a game effect allows you to do that. But they can perform those 3 actions on your player board without getting lost, without any penalties, and there are no conditions that you need 2 of them for 1 area or something like that. So you just send them out willy-nilly like that. And now your scientist, so the meeple that's representing you, whenever he is sent to a village space, he performs the action on the village space twice. So if I send him here, he would collect 2 chemicals. If I send him here, he would collect 2 animal corpses. And if I send him here, he would be able to build 2 buildings from the estate. I will talk about those actions in a moment. If there is this symbol, which is ×1 in a hexagonal border, that means that even if you send yourself to this area, you can perform this action only once. And why is this guy special as well, apart from being able to perform village actions 2 times? The rules are that if an area in the village is occupied by your piece or another player's piece, and you want to send another piece of yours on your next turn, then you have to pay exactly 1 coin into the resource pool, into the bank, in order to perform this action. So no matter if there are free minis here from other players or yours from previous rounds, if you send any new mini here, you always have to pay 1, with the exception of your hexagonal-based scientist. He performs those actions for free, no matter how many minis of other players or yours there are here already. So this is an added bonus to this single mini. Additionally, we need to mention that although you can send your scientists to perform these actions, for example, 2 times, or you can sometimes send, for example, 2 minis in 1 turn to perform the action 2 times, these actions here on your player board can be performed only once per turn. So you can't do 2 record knowledges or 2 perform experiments on 1 turn. So you have to send those pieces here individually. Okay, so those are the very basic basics of the game. Now you know which minis can go where and what are the rules, the additional special rules for those minis. So now let's go into the main turn overview, let's say. So let's talk about all of those actions and stuff. So at the very start of the game, first generation, first round, you must perform a few steps. So at the beginning of each generation, right, first, second, and third, each player draws 3 experiments from those 3 decks. So 1A, 1B, and 1C experiment, and you take them into your hand. At the beginning of each generation also, each player activates any start of generation abilities, if you have any in your estate upgrades, and also you receive any penalties from estate upgrades, and we will talk about those later, but remember, those happen always at the beginning of each generation. So once the generation is started, we can start the round, and at the start of each round, each player gains 3 coins, which you can place in your quarters, right, for use, and you draw 1 additional card from any of these decks. So for example, I'll take 1 more card from the A deck. So at the start of the game, after starting all the things from generation and round start, you should have 4 experiment cards, plus your masterwork experiment on your hand. And this masterwork experiment is always with you. It never is discarded unless a game effect clearly states that you need to discard the masterwork experiment, but those regular ones will be discarded and rotated pretty often. Okay, and after the start of the round, you basically go into this main phase of taking actions. And taking actions means placing your player pieces from your quarters until all players passed. You do it 1 by 1. So let's take a look here in the beginning. So in the village, there are different spaces which allow you to procure some resources. Like, for example, the traveling caravan, which allows you to take 1 occult knowledge cube and place it in your quarters as a resource. But this is with the cost of gaining 1 on the creepy track. You see here, there is this creepy icon. You can go to the farmer's market, for example, and take 1 animal corpse or 1 live animal. I don't know whether it's live or dead. You can establish it yourself, or take in an elephant and also add it to your resources. You can take 1 chemical, which are those empty vials, for example here in the park, 1 cog from the blacksmith, or you can go to the cemetery and dig up a corpse and also add it as a resource to your player board. What is interesting here is that if you go to the cemetery, you not only gain 1 creepy, but there is also this angry mob marker, which means that the angry mob moves 1 space towards the left. And as your markers on the creepy track move individually per player, because each player has to trigger those effects individually, then this angry mob marker moves for all players simultaneously. So there is only 1 and it affects all the players as close as it gets. And even if you send yourself to the cemetery to perform this action 2 times, so to collect 2 coffins, or you send 2 of your minis here to do this action 2 times, you only resolve those negative effects 1 time, once per turn. No matter how many resources you collect from this, you only resolve these negatives once per turn. And now what happens with those creepy markers and the angry mob? This is a pretty clever mechanic, because once a player reaches the angry mob marker or surpasses it in any way, that means that the mob is onto them and onto their experiments, and this means that you cannot send any more of your pieces into the village unless it goes back to the left side of the angry mob marker. And how can you do that? There is an action in the town hall, for example, to move the angry mob marker 1 space to the right. There is this arrow, but remember that it can't cross this suspicion marker that you've placed in the beginning of the game. Or you can go to the church and pay money to move your creepy 1 space to the left. I'm not talking about this heart icon because it's very specific to the scenario that we are playing, but this is basically the general rule. And you can move back 1 creepy to the left for 0 money, 1 cash gives you 2 movements to the left, and 2 cash gives you 3 movements to the left. And this is basically the majority of the spaces that you will find on your village board and how they work. There is also the builder's office, which allows you to build 1 of these estate upgrades, those regular ones. So when you go here, you select any of those upgrades, you pay the cost that you have on the tile, 5441, for example, and you place it in the next available space on your player board. Now, if all of your spaces on your player board, those 3 first spaces, are already covered, you need to add a new upgrade to your estate, you have a choice of either paying the additional cost of clearing out the rubble in those upgrade spaces and expanding more, or replacing one of the existing upgrades with the new one. Once you take an upgrade from this row here, you slide all of these upgrades down and you uncover a new expansion, a new upgrade, which you add over here. One more interesting thing about those estate upgrades is that sometimes, as you can see here, they have those 2 different types of borders. This is this kind of solid border, which does really nothing. You just add this upgrade and you use its effect anytime it's described. But those cracked borders of your estate upgrades tell you that there is a negative effect, like this one on the side, that you need to trigger. And this effect triggers the moment you purchase and install this upgrade in your estate. So if I purchase this and place it here, I will automatically gain 1 creepy and I will get 1 insanity. But then also, remember I told you that all of those negative effects will trigger at the beginning of every generation. So if you have a few of those cracked border upgrades in your player board, all of them will trigger at the beginning of every generation. So here, not on the round, but on the generation track, right? So this is very important to remember. And now this insanity track, if we are talking about gaining insanity, is also pretty interesting because as you can see here, you've got this symbol of compulsion cards on the top, and here on the bottom you have a few different symbols as well. So every time you advance your insanity marker because of those kind of effects, for example, or some app effects, or maybe some experiments that you've performed, you will gain some effects, or you will get some creepy, or you will lose a mini or something like that. So for example, this first space will tell me to take one compulsion card. And those compulsion cards have some kind of conditions and can give you victory points when you fulfill those conditions. Like for example, this one, must visit the church. So if I get this compulsion and I place it face down next to me because they are secret, and on my next round I send one of my miniatures to the church, I can uncover this compulsion, gain 2 victory points, and discard this card from my hand. If my marker moves here, I gain 1 compulsion card additionally, and I also gain 1 creepy, and so forth and so on. If my marker moves here, you can see here this circular base with those protrusions, which symbolizes the spouse. No matter where my spouse is, whether she is or he is or they are on the main board or in my quarters or in one of the areas of my estate, they automatically are moved here. And at the end of the round, if they are here, they go to the lost space, which is how you can lose additional workers. Marker here, 1 creepy, 1 compulsion card. Marker here, you send one of your servants with a circular base into lost. Unless all of them are in lost, then nothing happens. Here, again, 1 servant to lost. Here, 1 compulsion card, and remove 1 upgrade from your estate. Any other movements here will result in losing 3 victory points. Now, this track has also one additional functionality, but I will talk about it at the end of the round and at the end of the generation, sorry. So you follow this track and you get those bonuses and you get those negative effects as much as you go insane, basically. Now, let's move out from here and let's move into our estate, because here you have 3 areas in which you can perform actions as well. And let me remind you that those areas can be visited by everybody, but if you send servants or your spouse here, they may become lost at the end of the round because of those symbols in the corners. So, record knowledge is a pretty interesting action because it allows you to save knowledge that you possess so that you can kind of use it regularly in the following rounds. And what you do here is that if you want to perform the record knowledge action, let's say that, for example, I have 1 blue chemistry knowledge in my quarters, in my resources, then I can advance my chemistry knowledge 1 space here on this track. Each column has a cost. 1 knowledge is required here to spend. You need to spend 1 knowledge to advance to the first column. You need 2 knowledge to advance to the second one, and 3 knowledge to advance to the third one. So for example, right now I would be able to spend this 1 knowledge and advance 1 here on the chemistry track. This knowledge has to be of the matching color to the row that you want to advance. And what this means is that right now, if I'm advanced by 1 on this space, and we tend to place 1 marker here just to remind ourselves that we've advanced already, but there is a limited number of markers, so I don't know if this will work for 4-player games too well. This advancement means that every experiment that you do from now on is 1 blue chemistry knowledge cheaper for you. If your marker would be here, then that would mean that each experiment would be 2 chemistry knowledge cheaper for you, and so forth and so on. So maximum you can get free discount on each of those knowledge branches as required, right? And you will see why those advancements are important when we get to the end of the round. Sorry, these keep falling down. Now, what else? If you get to the second level of recording knowledge, so you can get to level 1 by spending 1 knowledge of appropriate type, and then you can move to the second level by spending 2 knowledge of the appropriate type, but you have to do it one by one, so you can't jump through spaces. I wouldn't be able with one action to, for example, spend 3 and automatically go here. I have to do one action, pay 1 to go here, and then send somebody else here in the next turn, spend 2 to go here. Right? So you can't stack those actions together. Now, in the second column, you have special effects. For example, +1 servant at the start of each generation. So you wouldn't be starting with only 3 minis here, but you would have 1 additional servant here. Store 2 extra resources between generations, and I will tell you how is this important in a moment. Or have 1 permanent bee experiment completed all the time with you. If you advance to the third level, you choose one of these vanity upgrades that we placed next to the board, and you can place it in your estate. These are free of charge. They don't have any prices on them, but you still have to pay for the spaces if you need to clear rubble from your estate. So these are pretty cool. Now, this occult knowledge, if you advance on this track, this is pretty clever because you still have to pay those occult knowledge cubes to advance, but occult knowledge is a wild symbol when paying for experiments. So if you want to make an experiment but you have only occult knowledge, or you have saved occult knowledge from previous, recorded occult knowledge on the track, you can use it to pay for any requirements of any type of knowledge on your experiments, but at the cost of gaining insanity. You gain 1 insanity per each occult knowledge cube used as a wild symbol. If an experiment has a requirement of an occult cube directly, then you don't get insanity because you used the occult cube as is, not replacing anything else. But advancing on this track to record your occult knowledge also means that you will get 1 creepy at the start of each generation, and at the start of each generation you will move the angry mob marker 1 space to the left if you are here, and here you always build a vanity upgrade, right? So those tracks are pretty important because of the bonuses and because of the knowledge that you can save between generations. We'll get back to that in a moment. Additionally, here you have this information that after you record knowledge, you can discard the amount of cards equal to the cost of the column you've just moved into, and draw new experiment cards from any deck. So you can basically swap your hand a bit. And this is the end of the record knowledge space. Remember that if you place a servant here or your wife, they at the end of the round go into lost. Now, estate affairs is very easy. Here, if you send your piece, you get 3 cards with new experiments to draw from any of the decks, and those can be different decks, the same decks, you can mix them up, so you can take 2 A's and 1 C, for example, but you only keep 1 of them in hand and discard the other 2, or you take 1 cash, and that's it. And now the perform experiment space, this is the last action that you can do in the entire game, basically. Remember that if you want to use servants for this action, you need to send 2 of them, and they are moved into lost at the end of the round. And if you perform an experiment, you basically take a look at your experiment cards. You need to pay the requirement in the left corner of the card, and you place the experiment in front of you, and you receive all the rewards here. So for example, this is a C level experiment, and this would get you 2 movements of the angry mob token to the left, because, well, it's a serious experiment, but it gives you 10 VP, plus if it's conducted in the first generation, an additional 8 VP, in the second generation, an additional 4 VP. But each experiment has a required cost. And this one, for example, requires 3 occult knowledge cubes, 1 chemical, 1 corpse, and 1 A and 2 B experiments already performed in front of you. And this is where it gets interesting, because, for example, I would be able to pay for this experiment with 1 coffin, obviously, 1 chemical, and 1 occult cube, provided that I have 2 occult cubes stored here on the track as those permanent ones. So I would lose only 1 cube and have those 2 permanent ones working here for me, and this would give me 3. But I still need 1A and 2B experiments already completed. And this upgrade with a B experiment permanently available for me would also count for this. So this is, for example, how those most expensive experiments are paid for. Now, the A experiments are the cheapest ones usually, and for example, this one requires only 1 animal corpse, right? It gives you 1 VP, so very little, but it provides you knowledge that you can later use for higher level experiments. Now, B experiments, higher level experiments, require 1 A level experiment to have completed, and they require some knowledge, but they give you more victory points and some stronger bonuses, but also they can move you up on the creepy track or on the insanity track, and this is different. C-level experiments always require 1A and 2B experiments to be completed. So you can see that there is a kind of a pyramid effect going on here, and they're more expensive, but they have stronger effects. And your masterwork experiment requires you to have 1A, 2B, and 3C experiments completed, and some other requirements, like you can see here, 2 cogs, 4 engineering knowledge, and 2 chemistry knowledge, but they give you 21 VP and 2 insanity and 2 creepy, which is bad, but 21 VP is a crazy amount of victory points in this game. So remember about this pyramid effect stacking. And this upgrade here on the engineering field, on the second space of record knowledge in engineering field, can help you with getting this B experiment done. Okay, so now you know all of those areas on the board and on your estate that you can move into. And remember that once each player uses up all of their available workers, or each player passes, the round ends. Now, what happens at the end of the round? Servants, which were placed here on the insanity track because of these effects, if you advanced too far, are moved into lost. Servants, which were used to perform these actions on your estate, go into lost as well. Other pieces, so the square pieces and the hexagonal pieces from here and all the pieces that you have here, are returned to your quarters and are available for the next round. You pass the start player marker clockwise to the next player. You discard 2 upgrades from the estate upgrades, slide everything down and uncover 2 new ones. And you play the next round. You move also this marker here to the next round, obviously, and you play the next round. At the start of the new round, you also have to select the appropriate trigger in the application to see if anything is happening between the rounds in the app, but you do it after performing all the end of round actions, right? So then the new round starts, and at the beginning of the new round, each player gains free money. They draw 1 card from any of the 3 available decks, then they place the pieces, and if everybody says pass, then there's the end of the round again, and so forth and so on. And after the 3rd round is finished, and you do all of the end of round steps at the end of the 3rd round, then the generation ends. And at the end of the generation, first you go into the app, you click on the generation end to move up the plot, and you perform everything that is said at the end of the generation, and then you perform the following steps. From all of the experiments in your hand that you haven't completed, except for the masterwork experiment, which is always with you, you can keep only one and discard the rest. So for example, I will keep one B experiment and all the rest go back into their respective decks. From the experiments that you have performed, so the ones that you have face up in front of you, no matter how many you can have 2 A's and 1 B and whatnot, you keep only one and discard the rest into their respective decks, and you slide this one experiment here, and this will tell you that this is a permanently available experiment, somewhat similar to this if you gain this upgrade. So right now you will start the next generation. For example, in this situation, you would start your next generation with 2 B experiments already completed. So if you create 1 A experiment as well, you would be able to conduct C level experiments then. So you save only 1 experiment from the ones, right? You place yourself, your spouse, and 1 caretaker into the quarters, and all the other minis go back into Lost. So basically, each generation resets the board to the beginning of game state, right? You discard all your resources and all your money. This is very important. Through those 3 rounds, you amass your resources, you collect money and everything. But once a generation ends and you move into a next generation, you lose all those unspent resources and all this unspent knowledge. So if you don't save your knowledge on these tracks here, you will lose it at the beginning of every generation. You will lose all the cubes, and you can only save knowledge if it's been recorded here for the next generation, right? If you, for example, have this effect, store 2 extra resources between generation, this will allow you to keep 2 of your resources when there is a new generation starting. So in this step, you wouldn't lose 2 resources, but otherwise, other than that, you lose everything you've amassed. So you start from scratch, kind of, in the next generation, right? And also you reset your creepy and your insanity back to their original positions. And usually the app will also tell you what to do with the angry mob and suspicion markers. So to kind of sum up, the only thing that won't be reset at the end of a generation are your victory points. Everything else you might lose, right? And then there is a start of a new generation, and if it's the 3rd generation, you swap the upgrades from your estate, you discard those and you place the level 3 upgrades here. All right, so I would uncover 4 level 3 upgrades, here right now, if this was the 3rd generation starting. And on the 3rd generation starting, I would also flip this track to this side, okay? And the last very important thing, that when a generation ends, you have to take a look at how many compulsion cards you have left, so you haven't fulfilled during this generation. If you have 2 or more, then for every 2 leftover compulsion cards that you had, you discard them obviously, you gain 1 maladjustment card, which you flip up and place next to your player board. And this is a debuff or a negative effect that will accompany you for this generation, and at the end of the generation you will discard this card as well, and maybe you will draw a new one if you have any more not completed compulsions. Like for example, this maladjustment says that if the angry mob token overtakes you, this generation you lose 5 victory points as an additional penalty. Okay, and after you do all of those steps to finish the generation, you start the new generation, and you start by clicking in the app to move on with the narration. You draw 1 card from each deck per player, and you start all of the start of generation abilities that you could have on your estate upgrades, and also all the penalties that you have on those estate upgrades that have the cracked walls around them have to be triggered right now. And then you continue on with round 1, round 2, round 3. And after generation 3 is finished, you do all of the end of generation steps, obviously, and then you continue in the app to the epilogue, which will tell you how the game ends, what are the additional scoring points that you can, add or whatever. And this is basically it. Now, the last thing that I will tell you is that this game has those 3 tuck boxes with 3 scenarios. They are called the cost of disease, the time of war, and fear of the unknown. And for each of your games, you have to select one of those boxes, and you will have to tell the application which one you have selected. And in this box, there are a lot of additional cards, elements, tokens, and different things that I won't spoil for you right now. But when to use them and how to use them, it's all written down in the application, and the application will instruct you what tokens and which cards to take out when and what to do with them exactly. So don't spoil don't spoil the game for yourselves, guys, with looking through those boxes. Just, be a little curious and leave it as a bit of a secret for now. Okay, so this is basically it. This is my father's work. It's a great Kickstarter game that arrived very recently, 2 to 4 players. I hope that right now, after this video, you know a bit more on how to play this game and how to set it up, and what to do with all those great components. Sorry if this explanation was a bit rusty. I had half a year of a break from doing those videos. I will get better very, very soon, and I will get back on track with all of this. If you like this video, guys, I'll repeat it once more. Click the subscribe button to subscribe to my channel. Ring the notification bell. Give me a like under this video to support the channel a bit. And my name was Lone Vic. This was my father's work. I hope you are having a nice day, and well, see you soon at the table with another game. For now, thank you very much, and bye-bye.